Good evening, everyone, and welcome. It's really remarkable to see all of you here. Doreen is still, well, Tim Gifford is trying to get more chairs. I think we had 100 here, and clearly we have more than 100 people. So hopefully cheers are on the way. And Doreen, who will be our timer, is still signing people in. So we have a few comments to make anyway before we begin the public. You can't hear me, or you want me to stand up? What part didn't you hear? We are going to start now. We are trying to get more chairs in here. We're happy to see you all here. It's a wonderful turnout, and we appreciate it. I'm going to call the meeting to order. We're going to do the salute to the flag. We actually have one small piece of town business to take care of, and then we will move into the public hearing for the comprehensive plan. So, Conrad, would you like to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Do you have enough room?
Roll call?
Wendy Burton?
Yes.
Ann Arendt?
Yes.
Margaret Fallon?
Yes.
Nathan LaVirtue?
Here.
Corey Clanahan?
Here.
I make a motion to accept the agenda.
Second that.
You could announce that there's a few agendas up here, 50 I made.
There are a few agendas up here for anybody who would like them. They really just have what we're about to do right now and then the public hearing. That's the agenda in short and long. We need to pass the final order of the town board of the Town of Stanford establishing an ambulance district. Many of you know we've been working on this for several months with the fire company. We're creating a separate ambulance district to basically take the burden of the taxes away from the fire company. To take the burden of the taxes away from the fire company and make a separate district. The taxes, your end of the day, taxes won't change, but they will appear on a separate line, so the fire company doesn't use its entire budget up paying for the ambulance. So, the town board of the Town of Stanford, Dutchess County, hereby orders as follows. It is hereby ordered that as all of the requirements under Article 2A of the New York State Town Law have been complied with by the town board of the Town of Stanford, that an ambulance district shall be formed as follows. All properties within the boundaries of the Town of Stanford, Dutchess County, New York. As it is anticipated, there will be tax raised from taxpayers owning real property within the boundaries of the ambulance district, being approximately $800,000, which would impose a tax in the amount of $83.63 for the owner of real property with an assessed value equal to $100,000. This order shall be entered into the minutes of the proceedings of the town board during the meeting held on July 31st, 2023. This constitutes the final order of the town board of the Town of Stanford, Dutchess County.
Roll call. Wendy Burton?
Don't you need to second it?
I'll second.
Okay. Wendy Burton?
Yes.
Ann Arendt?
Yes.
Margaret Fallon?
Yes.
Nathan LaVirtue?
Yes.
Corey Clanahan?
Yes.
Thank you.
I also just want to take this opportunity to let you all know that for the August Town Board meeting, which is the second Thursday of August, we will be having John Hughes, who's the, he's a Stanford resident, and he was also the chief of the Pine Plains Police District, or Police Company. He'll be coming to our town board to talk about the possible agreement between Pine Plains and Stanford to have 16 hours a week of police cars here to monitor speeding. Apparently, John was told that this whole project was off the table, but it's not. We're first going to be discussing it first at our workshop and then at the next town meeting, and John will be there to answer questions, so I just wanted to make that clear. With that said, we'll begin the public hearing, and I have a few words to say, and I think a few other board members do. What? Oh, do I have to open this part of the meeting?
Yes.
Oh, I make a motion to open this part of the meeting, the public hearing.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
The 20-plus years of working on a revised comprehensive plan has been arduous and immensely time-consuming. When I moved here 16 years ago, Jan Guido was passionately involved. The list of citizens who bent their minds and energy to the task of creating a roadmap for our small town's future is long and bipartisan. The sweat equity spent has been mind-boggling, and I believe all generations of volunteers had the same goals, among them to preserve the unique rural character of Stanfordville, to protect our natural beauty, and to ensure that our elders and our children could afford to continue to live here. That long list includes Jeff Blows, Gene Likens, Sean McCarthy, Harry Reinhart, Virginia Stern, Carol Hanlon, Gary Lovett, Tom Angel, Robert Butts, Steve Godovich, Spencer Hall, Conrad Levinson, John Royal, Jan Guido, Mark Burdick, Richard Bell, Tom Dewhurst, Michelle Inzio, Duffy Layton, Larry McKeough, Karen Mosier, James Sansom, and Jeff Spears. Some of this work goes back to 2007. The quote master plan itself goes back to 1980, and forgive me if I've left anyone out. As I've often said, not every aspect of a comprehensive plan is going to please 100% of our citizens. Each of us may find something we disagree with. The various iterations of boards have tried hard to find consensus when possible. Priorities include encouraging businesses while still maintaining the nature of our town and neighborhoods, making sure that working families, our children, young families, and our elders all have access to housing that they can afford, which means teachers, gardeners, nurses, plumbers, bank tellers, etc. We cannot continue the trend of losing our own citizens due to the price of housing. The list goes on, from protecting our water sources to historic preservation, recreation, and beyond. We need a blueprint to begin the hard work of improving our terribly outdated zoning code. I don't know of anyone who thinks the code as it stands is serving our community. I'm not sure why it has taken the elected leadership of our town 30-plus years to address the very real problems we are facing in our code, which dates back to 1982. The way to get that process in motion is to have the courage to take on the revision of an old plan, dig in our heels, and work together. Please remember that the comprehensive plan does not create laws. It creates recommendations that ultimately will be dealt with by an as-yet appointed zoning commission and then finally approved by a town board with public hearings, as all laws, zoning laws included, need to include. We look forward to hearing your comments at this public hearing. I want to thank the people who attended over a year's worth of comprehensive review plan committee meetings, as well as attending the town board comprehensive workshops. At the end of the day, we're a small community, and I believe we can do this work together. This is a real working public hearing. Unlike others I've been in attendance for, no conclusions are predetermined. The town board workshop will be in August. We're open to changes, and for instance, there are already two that have come in that I think are very worth considering. One from the county and one from a letter that we'll read in due time. But the last thing I'll say is, in the spirit of community, I just ask for civility. This is a difficult topic. A lot of emotions are involved. We're here to listen, and then we will act. And I thank you again for coming here to express your opinions. Mark.
Hi, can you hear me in the back? Great, thank you. I would also like to thank all the community members who are in attendance, and thank you for caring about our town. I'd like to thank all the community members who have worked on this plan over the years, contributing their blood, sweat, and tears. I would like to say a special thank you to the two chairpersons of this committee, Jan Wedo and Gary Lovett, who aren't with us today. And I'd also like to thank the most current members of this committee. I'd like to thank all the people that Wendy mentioned who came out time and time again, came to town hall, to public hearings and public workshops to give their comments and to give their input. I'd also like to thank the many, many people who wrote in, who couldn't attend a meeting, but they sent an email or they called town hall to give their input on the document. I'd also like to personally thank Supervisor Burton. When we ran together for office 4 years ago, restarting this plan and getting it passed was something that we promised the voters of this town, and I'm really proud to be working on the last steps of this document with her. Wendy has provided updates to the town community through her weekly newsletter about this process, but she's really also made a superhuman effort to make herself personally available at the town hall to anyone who has come in with a question, to anyone who has called, or even people who have stopped her in the parking lot. This document is very personal to me. Every time we met to discuss this plan, I thought about my son John, who, when the 2010 version of this plan started meeting, he was entering this building as a kindergartner, and he is soon to graduate from college. I would really like him to be able to come back to his hometown and buy a home here. And that's why I support this plan so wholeheartedly. I think, for me, in my opinion, the most important words of the plans are the ones that we as a board had added. We said that we envision a plan that, quote, helps young families buy their first house, keeps seniors in their homes, encourages sensible development while protecting the historic rural nature of the town. And I hope that is a goal that we can all get behind. The board is here tonight to listen to your comments, whether they are compliments or complaints. I would ask that you be as specific as possible with your comments, what section of the plan you're referring to, by topic or subtopic or page number, because that will help us best address the issue or concern that you have. Thank you.
First, let me say,
Talk louder. I can't hear you, much less the back.
so I'm going to stand up and sing. I just want to start by saying it's really exciting to me to see all of you here tonight. It's a testament to our town. It's a testament to how much all of you care. This document, the fact that we have reached this point, and that's a collective we, that's not a town board we, that's a community we, because this, as you know, has been stated, has been going on for well over a decade. We're at the point where we can have a public hearing and have this opportunity to get your feedback for the comprehensive plan. It feels a little bit in recent days that eyes are on the town council regarding what is in the plan. But the reality is this plan is the result of hours of hard work from a dedicated bipartisan group of community members. They worked transparently over the last 13 years, and those involved shared their views from a variety of lenses. And I think that's really important. But the end goal was always the same, and that's to create a plan that allows Stanford to preserve its rural character while allowing for future growth. And we all know we need that in order to sustain ourselves. The comprehensive plan is simply guidance. It creates recommendations for future decision-making entities in the town as we look ahead for the next 20 years. Again, this whole document belongs to all of us. It's a working document, and it's wonderful that all of you are here. We're looking forward to hearing your thoughts because, we don't want to work in a bubble. We want to know how do you envision the future of our town? And here, and how do you see the goals versus what we see? So, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah. I'll be quick because I know I want to listen to everyone that's here. So again, I'm impressed by everyone that has turned out this evening. Sorry. I just got that message. Yes, so I'm really impressed that everyone turned out tonight. It's awe-striking, and it undermines or underscores the importance of this document in particular. Last year, a third of my time was spent working on this. As far as the town board member. So I really appreciate everyone showing up, and I'm excited to hear all of your thoughts. And like the other ones have said, this is an important endeavor, and it's one that's long overdue, and it's taken decades to complete. So thank you for coming.
Or you have anything to say?
I'll be even quicker. I just want to say what a beautiful thing it is to see everyone out here. It lets us know that we all take responsibility for the area that we live in, the community that we have, and that each of us are an important part of this. So I'll keep mine short, but thank you guys for being here. Appreciate it, and I look forward to hearing everyone's thoughts.
Okay, so Doreen, our beloved deputy town clerk, is going to both be our timer. As we said in our publications, we're limiting, I'm sorry? We're limiting comments to 5 minutes, simply so we don't spend the week here. Hopefully, as Margaret said, you can be specific about what you want to be talking about within the plan. And so Doreen is going to both call your name as you signed in when you came in the door, and she'll also be watching the clock for us so we can pay full attention. So Doreen, I turn it over to you.
Jack Evans.
Testing. Okay, this is a discussion of the high-density residential growth on page 120. Under the future residential land uses, the following is recommended. Number 1 indicates a focus on high-density residential growth within the Stanfordville and Bangor hamlets. Regarding this recommendation, the following is noted and indicated on page 11. Some significant revisions to the 2012 draft master plan were suggested in public comments, and the plan was revised in response to those comments. As a result, the following were removed and not included in the 2023 comprehensive plan. 1, removal of the recommendation for public water and sewer system in Stanfordville and Bangor hamlets. 2, the removal of the recommendation for a planned development district. So why would the 2023 plan recommend new high-density residential growth within the Stanfordville and Bangor hamlets when in fact there is no infrastructure to support it, and when in fact the townspeople overwhelmingly rejected the plan in 2012, which included an allowance for 600 housing units and various commercial businesses to be built behind McCarthy's Pharmacy? Rightfully so. Most townspeople rejected this plan and would have increased our population in Stanford by approximately 1,900 people, being a 52% population increase in a matter of a few years from 3,700 residents to 56. It is noted that the Dutchess County Department of Planning and Development's review letter dated 7/21/23 points out the same conflict with the above in mind. I believe that the comprehensive plan needs to reflect the fact that there can be very little residential growth in the Bangor hamlet and only moderate density growth in the Stanfordville hamlet. Growth in these two hamlets will be based on what individual septic and water supply systems can be approved by the Dutchess County Health Department. This being said, I believe that the draft needs to recognize that our residential growth is going to be outside of the hamlet areas and on the county side. Perhaps more than any other town in the county, Stanfordville has a unique combination of small hamlet areas, subdivisions such as Charwell, Tick-Tock, and Ridge Road. individual lots along existing town roads, large farms and other large parcels, many with conserved open space through conservation easements. This unique combination allows for a choice of some hamlet living, numerous small parcels that offer countryside living, and many large farm and estate parcel opportunities. This is how our town has evolved. This is who we are. Do not try to turn us into a Rhinebeck where no young working family can afford to purchase and set down roots. I believe a substantial number of residents have settled here over the years because of the opportunity to own a small lot that is not clustered together in close proximity to another house. Many residents have left the city settings just so that they are not clustered next to one another. This is not a criticism, but an observation of reality. Of the 7 Comprehensive Plan Review Committee members and the 6 town board members who were involved in this draft, all of them live in the countryside. None live in the hamlet. Surely this is an indication that most families would prefer to raise their kids in the countryside. I believe undeveloped parcels remaining in the town can allow this to continue without causing urban sprawl by maintaining overall average parcel size of 5 acres. I'd like a show of hands if anybody who agrees with that. Thank you. Yeah. Okay, quick statement if I got time. Mark Burdick handed in a 19-page document on March 10th, 2022 concerning the previous draft of the plan. On March 31st, 2022, there was an emailed comment between the town board members discussing Mark's comments. One of the board members commented that Mark's comments should be taken with a grain of salt. Mark and his family have 120 years in this town, 8 generations of community involvement and service in Stanfordville. His words are not and should not be taken with a grain of salt. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack.
Jack, I have a question. At the beginning, you referenced page 11. Was page 11 on the you said that...
I'll get back to you after this. We want to get people to speak.
Okay, I just want to make sure we can answer that. Thank you.
Wendy, ask people for their addresses.
Oh,
Do you want me to say, I was going to give you the list. Would you like me to announce them?
Jack, what's interesting is when I said that there were already some changes that I was advocating for, I was referring exactly to the paragraph that you cited in the county letter. And I had brought this up personally, that I think we have to move development outside of out of the hamlet. It actually doesn't make sense to me when we have all these other areas out by Willowbrook or wherever that have room for housing and have room for septic. So I have to say I utterly agree with you, and that's one of the things that I want us to be able to workshop and change in the plan. I couldn't agree more. As far as Mark, I just have to say that I have a tremendous amount of respect for Mark. He has put sweat equity into this town like no other. I wish, and I utterly understand why Mark and Duffy both declined to be on the next iteration of committees, because they'd already put in 8,000 years and had other things to do in their lives. When Mark came, and Mark, I hate to be talking about you in the third person because I know you're right here, but his letter was difficult because it was almost like he wasn't on the review plan, and yet he was writing an entire plan, basically. 19 pages is a lot. But that being said, some of his suggestions were included in this plan, and I honor his efforts. I don't think we can have him write a whole plan, and I suppose he would say he wasn't trying to do that. But maybe there were missed opportunities, but again, that's why we're here tonight, and I thank you for your comments.
Bill Harkle Road.
Good evening. I'm going to discuss affordable housing for families. On page 120, Future residential land uses, the following is recommended. Recommendation number 2 says, require all major residential subdivisions applications to prepare a construction and/or cluster alternative. Recommendation number 3 says, allow average density subdivisions to encourage flexibility in lot sizes and prevention of valuable open space and ecological habitats. Official document page 8 indicates many people envision a town that helps young families buy their first house. Page 18 indicates plan notes a potential need to diversify the housing stock to attract young families. Page 66 indicates the goal of the future land use plan is to ensure that the residential growth and sustainable and achieve community vision and goals. Page 67 indicates population trends over the past few decades reveal a need to provide a range of housing types to accommodate the town's changing demographics and encourage young people to consider Stanford as a good place to live. I believe that recommendation number 2 or 3 will not even come close to achieving the goals of bringing young working families to the town of Stanford. The reason being is the town's stringent planning board review process, road specification, and minimum lot size requirements make it economically unfeasible. The cost of the planning board review process, which will become even greater with the draft's proposed additional environmental regulations, and the cost to construct the required road and infrastructure make it impossible to start at a cost that can be afforded by new young working families or even sons or daughters of existing families. It is a known fact that the least expensive lots in the town are those small acreage lots that are along existing town-maintained roads, where only driveways needed to be cut in for access. No roads had to be built during the subdivision process. In addition, these houses can be seen from the road, making the lots less desirable to the higher income families. These lots are located along just about every road in town, including Willowbrook, Pumpkin, Hobbs, Hicks, Market, North Anson, Layton, Gristmill, Mountain, Creamery, Huns Lake, Atterbury Hill, Jameson Hill, Bull's Head, Sisters Hill, and many other roads. Surely this should be allowed to happen again to give the chance for a working family to be able to afford to move to Stanford. This can be achieved without increasing the present allowed density by doing the following. Allow smaller lots along town roads while still maintaining the parent parcel's overall acreage of 5 acres per parcel. Streamline the planning board approval process. Reduce environmental regulations rather than increase them, as is proposed in this draft. It should be noted that every time additional regulations are imposed, it makes less sense affordable for the working family to move to Stanford. Reduce the stipulations in such things as scenic road regulations to make sure these lots are allowed. I'm not making this a criticism, this is an observation also. One of the 7 comprehensive plan review committee members and 6 town board members who were involved in this draft, 4 live on lot sizes less than 1 acre. 5 live on lot size less than 4 acres. 10 out of the 13 parcels access directly onto existing original town roads. 12 out of the 13 houses can be seen from the adjacent town road. Surely, this is an indication of what type of lot would be more affordable to the very families that this draft comp plan says we need. Who here in this room agrees with that?
This is ridiculous.
Thank you for your time.
Time's up.
Do you understand? Next person.
Kathy Zier.
Hi, I'm here tonight to read a letter from Steve Godovich to...
Oh, I have that letter, Kathy.
40, he asked me to read it.
Oh, he asked me to read it too, so.
Okay, well, I'll read it first.
I'm not going to read it again.
I have his email. Okay, Steve Godovich, 249 Layton Road, Stanfordville. My time starts now, okay? Steve is long-winded. My name is Steve Godovich, and I live on Layton Road. I am the Town of Stanford assessor and have been for 22 years. Also, I served on the Master Plan Committee from 2010 to 2013. The proposed plan is dedicated to preserving Stanford's rural character and agricultural heritage. I don't think anyone would argue with these goals. One of the priorities of the plan seems to be open space. It was mentioned in the plan that Stanford is 50.3 square miles, or 32,190 acres, of which 413 acres are water bodies and water courses. Of the remaining 31,800 acres, 9,920 acres are protected from further development by conservation easements or owned by preserving entities such as Audubon, Hudsonia, governments, and foundations, which represents 31% of the town's area. Some 1,240 homes are located on 9.9 acres or less, thus not eligible for subdivision, and are situated on 3,590 acres. All told, 13,500 acres of the town, 42%, is sheltered from further development. I believe this is the most of any town in Dutchess County. Development of the remaining eligible acreage is restricted by wetland, steep slopes, parcel configurations, and other developmental obstacles. So it is my opinion that open space considerations need not be a high priority in the planning stage. Of importance in the document is the contribution of agriculture. I was a farm manager of Wheatley Farm, 800 acres, for 35 years, and understand the mechanics of farming and the role in the community. I think folks should know that although agriculture and forestry exemptions, should know through agriculture and forestry exemptions, the tax burden exempted is shifted to other property owners. The median valued home in Stanford at $380,000 pays $563.36 a year in extra property taxes to pay for those exemptions enjoyed by a few owners, 121 owners, of which 5 are identified as family farms. So taxpayers are paying dearly to help maintain rural vistas. As an aside, the median home value of $380,000 pays $62.77 a year to cover exemptions for seniors, disabled, and veterans. Very ironic. The plan speaks of critical environmental areas. These are areas in town that were designated as important, and activity within them are exposed to increased planning board scrutiny. I was on the town board when these were established in the early mid-'80s. They were a good idea, and CEAs were fast-tracked because, coincidentally, 2 of the 6 CEAs included locations that the county had identified as possible locations for a landfill for the resource recovery incinerator ashes. My statement, that was my parents' farm. The CEAs, along with the convenient discovery of a blanding turtle, foiled the county's attempt to locate a landfill in Stanfordville. I do not believe we need further CEA or expansion of existing CEAs. There are more than enough regulations at the state and federal level to ensure adequate environmental concerns. I also worry that the plan would restrict property owners' rights through ridgeline rules. Homes would not be allowed, and certain restrictions on agriculture or possible agricultural acreage. The intent may be admirable, but any such restrictions should be compensated for the owner, as development rights have value. With the current zoning, never mind the new proposal, there would never ever again be a new TikTok Way, Trestle Lane, Ridge Road, Woods Drive, Charwell Drive, etc. Are these so terrible that there's no room for these type neighborhoods? The plan notes that the population of the town is aging. I believe the school enrollment is declining, indicating loss of families. The 2020 census indicates a loss of population of 5% from 2010. I therefore believe the major priority of the plan should address this critical situation. But as I previously pointed out, the thrust of the plan is just the opposite. The proposed plan does not indicate in any way that 70% of the property net worth of the
Kathy,
town...
I think your time is up.
Okay, let me just finish this sentence. 70% of the property net worth of the town is owned by 30% of the property owners. He has one more statement, and then it's signed respectfully, Steve Godovich. People agree? And I'd like to add my letter for the minutes.
I've sent it to Rita. She has a
I'd like
copy
to
of
add
it.
mine, too.
It's the same letter, Kathy. I wish Steve was here. He's still not, he's not home. But my question, and I really want to know the answer to it, is he proposing that we get away from the agricultural exemptions? In some ways, this would be a huge boon to most property owners because, as Steve points out, and this has been going on for years, all of us are shouldering that burden, that tax burden. It's been in place, I don't know how long it's been in place.
But you can't change it on the local level.
Interesting. Well,
I'm just, sorry.
so that was one question, because they are already in place, and if we can't change them on a local level, that presents a problem. The other one point that I think we agree on is that, and what Jack and I were talking about, is there have to be room for new TikTok ways, trestle lanes, Ridge Road, Wood Drive, Charwell, etc. That has to happen because, as Jack pointed out, and as the county pointed out, we don't have any place else to grow. I think there are...
Are you going to be responding to every comment, or...
I'm sorry. I'm gonna respond when I feel it's appropriate, and I'm not gonna respond when I have nothing to say. So thank you. I'm going, what? Carl, what I would like to do is read two letters into the record, and one of them addresses the whole CEA question. And again, it's a great point. Part of the problem of having a comprehensive plan go on for 800 years is that things get lost as you change regimes and you change committees, things get lost. And this is a really good example to me of things getting lost. It is, it's from Alan Rapelier, and it's speaking for Michael Rena. Dear Supervisor Burton and Town Board members, I'm enclosing a copy of my letter to the Comprehensive Plan Review Committee dated April 29th, 2021, with regard to the RENA property and the proposed expansion of the CEA affecting our client's property. I also enclosed a copy of the conservation easement affecting this property. The original is signed and recorded. After our prior letter, it appears no changes were made to the expansion of the critical environmental area well within our client's property. I reiterate our objection to this expansion for the reasons contained in my prior letter, which is enclosed, as well as this communication. I also add there is nothing in the State Environmental Quality Review Act which would require the designation of such area, as land use application may be subject to seeker in any event. In fact, the existing town code refers to NYCRR 6174 as the source of the authority for such a designation. There is no such section of law that I could locate. What he's saying is that there's no reason to expand this CEA on Mr. Rena's property. I think this is a really great piece of information. I'm sorry we didn't have it when we were reviewing the review committee's review, but I take the point, and I think that at least this CEA should not be expanded, and if anybody else has other CEAs that involve their property, please let us know. And
why don't we wait till the end to read the letters in? Why don't we let people who are here speak first,
Okay.
and then we'll read the letters at the end?
Adrienne Zetterberg.
Good evening. So I will be speaking to the commercial retail land uses portion of the comprehensive plan, specifically the home-based businesses. Closer. I'm looking for some clarification on this issue. Who will determine what is appropriate or conducive to a residential property? This needs to be made clear, as well as what is appropriate or conducive. In Stanford, almost all these essential service businesses are home-based. These include plumbers, electricians, masons, carpenters, HVAC technicians, excavating contractors, cabinet makers, fence builders, landscapers, painters, farriers, pool maintenance contractors, building contractors, property managers, some photographers, and other forms of artists. Our economy, as well as the economy of the rest of the country, rely on most of these services. This comprehensive plan recommends that these commercial uses be only located along the Route 82 corridor within the hamlets of Stanfordville and Bengal. It is very clear that there are not enough parcels within these hamlets to accommodate all of the businesses. If there were, most home-based business owners would not be able to afford to purchase or rent a separate parcel of land. I would like to make sure home-based businesses are located throughout the town. Not only do the residents of and businesses of Stanford rely on these home-based services, but the home-based businesses rely on the community to support their families and the families of their employees. These businesses have been operating in town long before the original comprehensive plan or zoning ordinance were adopted. After a recent complaint to the zoning enforcement officer and the ambiguity of the present zoning ordinance, it has been determined that most, if not all, home-based businesses are not allowed to operate in our town unless they have been operating on their property before 1984 or 1985. I would also like to know what will happen the next time an unhappy neighbor complains about a home-based business and the zoning enforcement officer must shut them down. As the wife of a home-based service business owner, I have very real concerns. With the above in mind, I would like to see the comprehensive plan clarify who will determine what is appropriate and conducive, what each will mean to our current home-based businesses, as well as adding in bold, allow home-based businesses that are appropriate and conducive to residential properties while recognizing that the town wants and needs these home-based businesses to operate with fair and reasonable site guidelines. Also, after reading the supervisor's comments on a recent Facebook post regarding this issue, I believe that further action needs to be taken to grandfather in these current home-based businesses before this comprehensive plan is voted on or approved. Assuming the supervisor's comments are true and honest, it is still truth that the supervisor does not have the authority to declare that anyone be grandfathered in. There is a process to make these changes, and that is not making a comment on social media and not just the decision of the town supervisor. I'm curious as to why the supervisor considers this post disinformation. Without these businesses, the newer residents would be forced to either hire non-local businesses or do this work themselves. Thank you, guys.
Wendy, could you ask
Rob
if they wanna
Staskell?
give me their- Yes, thank you. If they want to give me their written
Oh, sure, sure.
Okay. I'm missing Jack's.
Jack will give it to you. Do you want me to say it now? Yes.
Good evening. I want to talk a little bit about the economic development part of the plan. I believe it's that the outrageous costs associated with the planning board's approval process, along with the construction costs to do the improvements, cannot be afforded by most small businesses in Stanfordville. It's just not sustainable. On page 123, bullet number 2 says, pursue grants to support conversions of existing structures, streetscape improvements, and facade improvements. The following should be added. If grants are not obtainable, the town will fund infill developments such as streetscape improvements. In general, the town's site plan, special use permit, subdivision, zoning, and other town regulations should be revised with affordable sustainability in mind. A couple examples. It has been stated that the comprehensive plan will not require sidewalks. However, Chapter 138 of the Town Code entitled Street, Roads, and Sidewalks requires sidewalks. These should be revised.
I'm sorry, would you just say that again?
Chapter 138 of the Town Code entitled Streets, Roads, and Sidewalks requires sidewalks. Also in Chapter 138, the private road specifications, which can only serve up to 8 houses, and the driveway specifications are more stringent than the construction of our town's quote-unquote cherished dirt roads. In general, the road specifications should be revised with economic sustainability in mind. definitely should be revised. Chapter 164 of the Town Code, entitled Zoning, under special use permits, requires that all parking and service areas shall be screened at all seasons of the year from view of adjacent residential lots, streets, or roadways. I believe these types of regulations are out of touch with reality and don't work in a small town such as ours. To the contrary, in a small town, I believe that it's best to see cars in and out of businesses, and it's a sign of business happening in town. Similar to what the town board did regarding the farm markets, our zoning code's use table should be reviewed to see what other uses could be permitted by right or permitted by a simple application to the zoning enforcement officer or the, rather than having it be bogged down in the long approval process before the planning board. The zoning commission should be tasked with reviewing all of these regulations to make economic development sustainable. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think that's the whole point of the, having a zoning commission and rewriting the code, because it doesn't work.
Duffy Layton.
I don't know how many of you know, but I am a third-generation resident of this town. I own 110 acres in the town, employ 6 people in my business. As was mentioned, I did serve on one of the commissions, and I would like to read this letter of one of my concerns, of many. On page 121, Stanford Comprehensive Plan, May of 2023, draft, under commercial/retail land use, recommendations number 4 says, extend the northern boundary of Rural Center RC zoning district along the east side of Route 82 to the intersection of Mills Lane. For those of you not familiar, this extends the RC zone from the Stissing Bank to Mills Lane, including Uncle Sonny's, now Three Brothers Pizza. The RC zone allows certain listed commercial uses. After much discussion, the town board decided that this extension will only be along the east side of Route 82, and they specifically did not include John Hughes' property on the west side of Route 82. Although this does not prevent John from continuing to run his repair and used car sales business at a pre-existing non-conforming use, I believe his parcel should be included in the expanded RC zone for the following reasons. According to the draft, page 69, the RC zone is being expanded to allow more opportunities for businesses, including those that have larger space requirements. It should be noted that commercial activities in our present RC zone is limited due to small lot size and lack of infrastructure. This being said, John Hughes' parcel, which is perfect match, being 18.82 acres, it would be one of the few parcels that has enough acreage to allow for easier health department approval of well and septic. John's parcel has been commercial property for more than 75 years. It was first started as a business in 1948 by John's uncles Steve and Lou Cavanero, who repaired and sold cars and had a junkyard. I think this is one of the oldest businesses in the town of Stanford. As a result of community activity, is certainly not new to this area. It cannot be justified how one side of the road can be zoned RC while just 50 feet away, a parcel which has been commercial for more than 75 years isn't included. The concern that John's business buildings are too close to the Wappingers Creek is not justified, in that many of the parcels within the present RC zone already have buildings closer to the creek. Furthermore, the town itself just built its new highway garage, including an equipment repair bay closer to the creek than John's repair shop. If in the future, thank you. If in the future, in the event that some other type of commercial business wants to occupy the site, all applications submitted to the planning board must be addressed, impacts and mitigating measures relative to any creek. So the planning board has to address these issues during the application process. The concern that John's parcel could attract chain retail interest or other large incompatible uses seems a bit preposterous. But as per a letter from Dutchess County Planning to the Comprehensive Plan Review Committee, this current concern could be alleviated by requiring mitigating buffer setback requirements to adjust the Wappingers Creek, and crafted regulations regarding allowable uses and setbacks to address chain retail concerns. The property has had the same use for more than 75 years, far longer than any of the neighbors who own land neighboring it. So the neighbors are well aware that that was commercial use prior to purchasing that property. If zoned RC, in the event John had to close his business for health reasons or for whatever reason, he wouldn't have to worry about losing his pre-existing non-conforming use status if he didn't sell his business within one required year. So considering the above, John Hughes' parcel should be included in an expanded RC zone. And I will also state that was when I served on the committee, we studied long and hard and wanted the RC zones expanded both sides of the road up to Mills, but also the Salt Point Turnpike, which now has not happened. But we need room in Stanfordville for growth, not Standstillville. Thank you.
Janine Hahn. Robert Hahn. Is he coming up?
How is that? A little louder? I apologize. I am not so eloquent or so well prepared as my previous speakers. The one thing I do know, I look around this room, I don't see too many young people. I see many people my age and close to it. In the past 20 years, I have seen my taxes double and my salary halved by retirement. This town exists for me. I don't exist for this town. It's been said many times in history. Before anything is done and anything is passed, the quality of life and the expense to every single individual here needs to be taken into account. God bless.
Stacey Adams.
Is that better? So my comments actually are with reference to the future use section and the natural resources and environment section. I did not include pages in mine, but I can at some later date if you need it. But you'll notice that my comments actually pertain directly to some of the recommendations, if that gives you a better place to go. So the following is a list of authorities or rules and regulations that someone might have to deal with today if they were going to put a project together in our town of Stanford. They would deal with Stanford's zoning ordinance, with the subdivision regulations, with Stanford's erosion and sediment control law, with the grading permit law, the scenic road law, the logging ordinance, these are all Town of Stanford, New York State Building Code, Dutchess County Department of Health, New York State Department of Environmental Conservation, the Department of Transportation, and the Dutchess County Department of Transportation. So that's 11 different things currently that someone would have to deal with if they were going to instigate a project in the town of Stanford. So the comprehensive plan proposes to add the following additional regulations to those 11. To expand existing critical environmental areas to include the surrounding conservation priority areas identified by Hudsonia, to designate additional critical environmental areas, including along the entire length of the Wappingers Creek, to protect the 2 large forest blocks, which are 1,000 acres, to a local wetlands ordinance, a steep slope regulation, a ridgeline protection to expand scenic roads, to discuss the scenic view shed protection, an agricultural soil protection recommendation, and finally, additional logging and timber harvesting regulations. So that's an additional 10 to the 11 that are already in existence. So majority of these regulations take away property rights and most likely reduce the value of someone's property. So if the town should decide to adopt these regulations, really the only fair and equitable way to proceed would be through the purchase of development rights to these people, these property owners. Not only are these regulations unnecessary, I feel, and not needed, they're counter to one of the goals that we've been talking about tonight and in the comprehensive plan, which is to bring young working families to the town of Stanford. Because each time a new regulation is adopted, an additional consultant has to be hired. And each new consultant doesn't work for free. And all of this is an increase to the price of the lot, making it less affordable for these young working families that I really want to settle here, to be the future of this town. So, you know, we can ask any engineer or consultant, they're going to tell you regulations result in costs. And these days, those costs seem to be skyrocketing like crazy. So it's my feeling that the town has too many regulations right now at 11, especially given the population and the amount of land in this town, but that additional regulations are really not necessary, needed, or wanted.
Neil Johnson.
I've been a resident of Stanford for 54 years, also a property owner and a taxpayer for 30 years. My family was a major employer in Stanfordville that owned and operated a business here for over 40 years. When I was a councilman on the town board involved with the Master Plan Review Committee in the early 2000s, there were a few residents trying to promote increased density development, a town center, and sewage treatment facility in the rural center zoning district while reducing development around it. This plan was never accepted by the public due to property rights potentially overregulated, the construction of a sewage treatment facility allowing for overdevelopment in the RC zoning district. The town board concluded after due diligence, the fire company, town infrastructure, and schools could not handle the potential planned growth. So it's good to see residents here concerned that their property taxes and rights could be effective if this comprehensive plan is adopted. We currently have a master plan in zoning which has worked to keep our town from being overdeveloped. For the last 25 years, a few individuals have claimed that our current plan is outdated. They have been fear-mongering that this will wind up looking like Hyde Park or Westchester if we don't update the master plan with supporting zoning laws. Taxpayer money and time volunteers spent to update the plan has been astronomical. Every committee that has been formed and failed has not produced a plan that was equitable, respectful to property owners' rights, quality of life issues, or impact on property values. Most of the data collected from this plan is more than 5 years old. The Hudsonia study on critical environmental areas is not current. Why did the committee research and post town resident incomes? Also, the age of residents is not current. That's on page 29. The plan identifies areas to be protected as farmland areas with agricultural soils, water sources, view sheds, critical environmental areas, historic buildings, Wappinger Creek watershed, ridge lines, grades greater than 25%, wetlands 12 acres or less, and others. 25% of, or 8,000 acres of property in Stanford is in conservation easement, which can never have homes built on. If the remaining property had a density build-out analysis to show, excuse me, potential development with current zoning, then compare the new zoning needed to support the proposed comprehensive plan, it would be transparent to show the potential impact either way. There is software that can do build-out analysis, which was done, however, is not shown in this plan. Why? There are no comparisons of our current master plan versus proposed comprehensive plan, which I understand, if adopted, can be used as a legally binding planning guide regardless of supporting zoning laws and town ordinance. I have spoken to the tax assessor regarding the impact this comprehensive plan would have on property values if it is adopted. We concluded a complete property revaluation would need to be done. The disparity of property values will be all over the place, some increasing, some decreasing. What is the risk of litigation or lawsuits that can occur once property values change? How will the property tax levy be redistributed? So I recommend the town board does not adopt this concurrent proposed comprehensive plan.
Could you ask Neil if you could hand that to me?
Neil, do you have a copy that you can give us? Rita wants one.
Diana Mackey. Madeline Martin. James Mackey. Conrad Levinson.
Good evening. Most of you know who I am. I'm an architect and a sculptor. I've lived in Stanfordville for 33 years. I was privileged to be a member of the Town Planning Board for 2 years. I served on the 2010 Comprehensive Plan Committee and on the last Comprehensive Plan Review Committee. So I'm very familiar with the plans, the history, and the issues. And I just wanted to say that I couldn't be more pleased by the comments and the participation that's occurring this evening with regard to this plan. Over the 15 years or so that I've been involved in it, we tried to maximize community input as much as we could. But we've never had a turnout as big as this and never had as many constructive suggestions about looking at the plan and improving it. So I want to thank everyone who's come out tonight, because this is very important for the future of our town and the quality of life here. And thank the board very much for continuing this process to its conclusion. Thank you.
Roberta Kemp.
I don't have any papers. It's all going to come from here. I have lived in this town since 1954. I came here at the age of 17 as a new bride. My husband and I we raised 2 daughters. We built our home on Creamery Road in 1960. We were very involved as volunteers. My husband he passed away, unfortunately, 3 years ago. He probably holds a record for being a volunteer for the Stanford Fire Company for 68 years. No one does that. In addition, he served 10 years on the town board, and they all worked very well together in those days. In fact, Mark, your father, and my husband, your father was a Democrat, my husband was a Republican, but boy, they sure, came across the aisle on every issue. We purchased 1 acre of land for $500 that we built our home on. And, you know, we assimilated into the town. My children actually, who were born in 55 and 57, actually attended the recreation program in the summer. That's how far back that goes. And they had arts and crafts and all of that. And I'm here because I'm at the end of my lifespan, but I look around, and there was one gentleman who talked about the age of the people mostly represented here, and my fear is that I am afraid that we are going to be closing the door on getting young people to raise their families in a very rural setting, and that is distressing for me. So I think we all need to be attuned to that, okay?
Michael Rena? Come on up. No? Jim Griffin?
Hi, Jim Griffin, Charwell Drive. I just want to appreciate everybody talking about young families being able to afford homes here. I know when I moved here, it was the best we could afford. It was also 5 acres, and I know that 5 acres and young families don't go together. If anyone's really seriously talking about having a equitable community that young people can start homes, we have to look at that 5 acre zoning law.
John Kemmerer?
Good evening. I'm John Kemmerer. I'm a third-generation farmer operating. Sorry? Sorry. I'm going to talk about page 110 regarding farmland, scenic view sheds, and some planning board actions recently. Anyway, good evening. My name is John Kemmerer. I'm a third-generation farmer operating at Century Farm, where Bango, Armenia, and Schumann Road intersect. I'm happy that the town of Stanford has such a rich agricultural heritage and is planning to adopt the right to farm law for this town. However, what concerns me is the statement made in the Comprehensive Plan Review Committee's July 13th, 2021 minutes, indicating that the planning board will continue to review applications of non-agricultural development located within areas designated as having prime agricultural soils and/or of soils of statewide significance. An additional concern recommended in this draft is the establishment of scenic view sheds, including agricultural land and resulting implications. Yes, it is commendable to keep our farms here, but what about the future for those families who wish to give their children parcels of land to build their homes? Why should the kids be told where not they can build their homes? Or what if the farmer decides to sell his land? Surely the price will be reduced when a buyer knows he will not be able to build where he wants. Or if the farmer decides to sell to a developer. Surely this price will be reduced when a developer knows we will not be able to site homes in the most cost-effective locations. I am thankful that the Dutchess Land Conservancy has come into existence. The DLC helps protect agricultural land for future generations. A landowner can donate their development rights, or their development rights can be purchased in exchange for an easement. Any reputable local real estate appraiser who does appraisals for the purchase of development rights would confirm that our planning board policy and scenic view shed implications can reduce the value of the land thereby reducing the value of the development rights or conservation easement. This policy is a kick in the face to those farmers who have worked the land all their lives and not be compensated in any way, shape, or form. There are at least 4 farms in our town who could be hurt by these policies. We have the Clarence Knapp Farm, the Schwartz Brother, and now Hoagland Farm. It's our place, as well as Mark Burdick's Big Rock Farm. They could all be impacted. Giving the planning board final say must be stopped immediately by the town board. There must be a way to compensate farmers for giving up their development rights. The following farms have sold their development rights within the last 10 years. The Pulver and Ronnie Brook Farm, the Jordan Lade Farm in Pine Plains, the Pulver and Dunkindale Farms in the town of Northeast, the Shenandoah Farm in the town of East Fishkill, the Larry and Betty Steele Farm in Milan, Locust Grove Farm in Salt Point, now the home of Hackett Holsteins. It's the Miley and Glen Russa Farms in the town of Amenia. Then you have Meat Orchards and the Able Tree Farm. Selling rather than taking away development rights encourages property owners to permanently preserve their land for agriculture, providing important funds to reinvest in farmer operations or to transition a farm to the next generation. New York State Agricultural Commissioner Richard A. Ball states, New York State is proud to support these critical preservation projects that not only protect one of our most valuable assets from development and ensure that it remains affordable for current and future farmers, but also helps protect the food supply and strengthen the agricultural economy. I was a planning board member 20 years ago, and in conclusion, and with no disrespect to our planning board members, it is commendable to protect our farmland. But for those of us who have lived and farmed here for our entire lives, we should not be forced to give up our farm's development rights without being compensated.
John, could you just clarify something for me? Oh, would you, sorry. Are you also saying that you would like the ability to give farmland to your children, say?
Absolutely.
And not have them penalized or turned down because it's deemed agricultural?
Yes.
That was the gist?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And regarding the ag exemptions, I mean, I know a lot of people are bitter that homeowners, but if it weren't for that, we'd be done. I mean, every year it's harder and harder, and we make our living from the farm. I have a part-time job, but that doesn't pay the bills. So,
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Can we get your statement? You can grab him before he gets too far. Yeah.
Oh, John?
John.
You have a comment?
Yeah,
John?
thank you.
Stephen Horowitz.
Good evening. Thank you. I want to actually speak briefly on two comments, on two topics. The first is affordable housing, which people have referenced in a number of different contexts here. I'm a lawyer, had a career as a commercial real estate practitioner, and so I, in that context, worked on a lot of affordable housing projects. And in addition, as many of you probably know, there have been many communities in Dutchess County and the Hudson Valley that have focused hard on these issues in recent years. They're really challenging issues. And many communities, obviously, including Stanfordville, have focused on the need to create more affordable housing, especially for the reasons that were already been mentioned here by a number of people, to facilitate opportunities both for young people as well as elders to live comfortably or to continue to live comfortably in Stanfordville. So I very much support these efforts and believe that the comprehensive plan should heartily endorse those efforts. They're complicated, they're often controversial, and in part for that reason, I think that the plan should encourage a variety of approaches, not just a single approach, but a variety of approaches to affordable housing. It's a really tough problem. Many people have tried to come up with good approaches, but frankly, the history of developing affordable housing in many different locations is replete with examples of very well-intentioned efforts that don't always work. And so we have to be willing to be creative, to experiment, and approach these kinds of challenges with creativity, flexibility, and open minds. I don't want to specify, do it this way versus that way. That's not the purpose of my comments, but I would like to see the plan encourage the policy, encourage the study of the policy, and the development of different approaches. We have to really think hard about how we can do this. One specific idea, and it's come up in different contexts here tonight, is to think about what zoning technicians call as-of-right zoning, as distinct from needing a special permit, for example, from a planning board. As many have commented, planning board permits take time, they take money, they slow people down, and they often add expense. And it's very challenging to come up with a so-called as-of-right zone, which simply requires meeting predetermined standards that actually works from a policy perspective. It's not an easy thing to do, especially with a controversial subject, sometimes controversial subject, like affordable housing. But for example, we've heard tonight a number of people talk about smaller lot sizes, which obviously relates very much to expenses. They don't belong in every neighborhood by any means in Stanfordville, but there are obviously, based on the comments tonight, many neighborhoods where they might well be appropriate. That could be an example of an as-of-right approach, which could be helpful in developing affordable housing. So I'm hoping that the board, in whatever way it chooses to encourage affordable housing, that it is open-minded and flexible and seeks to encourage different approaches. I want to speak separately on the RC zone, about which Stuffy Layton spoke. As it happens, my wife and I are neighbors to the John Hughes property. My wife runs a farm on the property, and we live there. And we haven't had any problems with Mr. Hughes and the existing use, so I'm not opposed to its continuation. But I do think that whatever changes the board may decide to make on the west side of Route 82, I think need to be done in a way that recognizes the fact that there are non-commercial, non-industrial type uses on the west side, neighbors such as myself. And it's not to say that the board should in no way permit other commercial uses on the Hughes property. If that's what it decides to do, so be it. But I do believe that if that's the direction in which the board chooses to go, that it needs to think about the kinds of approaches, and some have been mentioned tonight, that could make another commercial use more compatible with residential uses. 18 acres could accommodate a very large facility, a building, that is, not to say, I mean, obviously, the existing use, it covers a fair amount of space, but it's not one large building. And I, for one, wouldn't be terribly happy to see a building, for example, that's 2 acres in size. That would be a truly enormous building. I don't want that, frankly, and I don't think that would be appropriate to the neighborhood. So I just think that whatever approach is taken, we need to think about mitigating factors for the benefit of residential neighbors. Those could include visual buffers, sound buffers, setbacks, other kinds of restrictions. I believe that's only fair in what I think is one of the obviously important approaches to this whole comprehensive plan, which is to balance the needs and interests of all current landowners in any given zone.
Thank you, Steve.
Can we get a copy of that?
What?
You want him to give me his phone?
Oh, it was on his phone?
Yeah.
Ben Rathjen.
Can you email that to Rita Mary?
Steve.
Steve, yeah. Can you, that was on your phone, right? That you read from? Yeah, can you just email it to Rita when you get a chance?
Am I good now?
Yes.
I just wanted to speak to specifically why a lot of people in this room moved to Stanfordville. We don't want to live in Rhinebeck. We don't want to live in Red Hook. We don't want to live in Westchester. We want to live in a community where you buy a piece of property, you have the rights to it, not your neighbors, not the town board. You have the rights to it. And I think this whole comprehensive plan is just putting more and more restrictions, giving the town, neighbors who complain, more rights to your property than the person that pays the taxes on it. Thanks.
Curtis DeVito. Gary Christensen.
Good evening. I've been a resident for over 50 years in Stanfordville. I live up on Market Lane. I read the plan, and what concerns me is the section on high-density housing. It's a term, but I don't see anywhere in the plan where there's a definition of what that means. And I think that everyone here would agree with the preserve the rural character of Stanford statement. But I'm not sure. It seems like that conflicts to me. Because in the Stanford I grew up, we really didn't have a lot of high-density housing. I understand there's a need for housing, but I think it's important that that's defined so that we understand what that is. Because it sounds like it represents a very different Stanford than the one I grew up in.
Johanna Schaefer. Peggy Walker.
No, Johanna's coming.
I'm so sorry, I didn't see her. Thank you.
Good evening. Like Roberta, I don't have any paperwork. And like Roberta, I'm getting close, not quite as close, I think, as you, to the end of my life. But I do have a few comments. I thought coming here, and they're not specifically to the plan itself. I felt a great sense of discouragement when I came in here, especially because of the signs I've seen around town. Neil spoke about fear-mongering. I think that's what they are, especially if people don't identify themselves. And I thought, what a shame that we're returning to the past. This comprehensive plan is not a political football. It is just germane for all of us who live here, especially the younger people. And I have been thrilled, not just with the work that has gone on from the beginning of trying to get it where we think it needs to be, but also by the comments that people have made tonight. People from all different perspectives. And I really appreciate that, and I know that the town board will take that seriously. What I do not appreciate as a member of Stanfordville is anybody using this like a political football or cheering for their side. We're here all together. We're going to work on this together, and it may take more time than we thought. I thought I'd heard myself say that again. But we need to honor all of the input that the people have given into this comprehensive plan over the years. And not only that, we need to get together and make it work. It is unconscionable that it has not been passed, that we have not stated the simple three things we talked about. Housing. We could not afford to buy our property today. We talked about housing, we talked about keeping the rural character, and I can't even remember the third thing. Those are very clear goals. We have to get together and pass the darn thing. Thank you.
Peggy Walker. Michael Schaefer.
Thank you for all of you that you've worked so hard to pass this plan, and especially Wendy Burton and all of you, the board. And it has been a long, long haul in this town. It's a very good plan that may need a little tweaking here and there by the zoning people. So, all right. I have heard a lot of applause, And you know what? I think it's largely been for individuals who have said very cogent things here tonight. I don't think it has been political, thank God. I think it's very good that everyone's here. I'm glad we've had it. I'm glad we're going to do it. And I'm glad, I think this board's going to pass this plan.
Michael Downing. William Strang.
Good evening, everyone. My name's William Strang, 2 Old 82, Stanfordville, New York. My father's been in business here since 1969, starting a gas station on the corner by Elvin's Market, which is now Bull's Head Treasures. Then in 1976, we bought the property up on Route 82, where he continued his business. But I'd just like to make one, it's not an opinion, it's a criticism. I'm wondering why there's such a comprehensive plan, but I didn't get anything in the mail indicating there's such a meeting. And to the lady's last comment there, if it wasn't for the big yellow signs I saw in town, I wouldn't even known about this meeting. I've tried to stay out of town politics. As a business owner, I don't want to alienate one side or the other. And quite honestly, that's why I've stayed out of politics. But I myself, I volunteered a lot of time with this town, whether it be coaching Little League, coaching softball, coaching baseball, soccer, football. I volunteered many hours to building Spark Park, Kelly Field. I've got a lot of time involved in this town. I have a lot of interest involved in this town. I didn't really have a lot of time. I thought I was going to briefly look online and see what this was all about. But as you mentioned something about Mark giving you 19 pages. Well, this thing was like 130-something pages. And I basically kind of like I studied for a lot of my tests in high school, kind of went through the Cliff Notes. But I've seen a lot of points, a lot of valid points from a lot of citizens here, and I'm very happy to see the turnout here, as everyone else is. But I think if you'd sent out something in the mail indicating this meeting tonight, I think we'd see a lot more people here tonight. I went to the post office today and I looked, and 2, 3, 4, 5 letters on the sign indicating this meeting aren't even up. They're askew, and you know, who's going to notice that? Like I said, it was a yellow sign that got my attention. Anyhow, I've seen a lot of different comments tonight. I've seen a lot of people bringing up their points, like the home businesses. Now, it doesn't affect me. I've been in business here long enough, and I'm actually under, I'm not a commercial piece of property. I'm non-conforming commercial, which, quite honestly, until Duffy said something tonight, didn't even cross my mind. But say I was to get sick and I wasn't able to maintain my business or stay in business for more than a year, then I would lose my commercial zoning, and that'd be the end of it. So, as far as what you do with who you appoint to commercial and not commercial, I would think a non-conforming commercial business that's been here as long as mine should be considered as well. But that isn't really why I came here tonight. I just saw some quick language about the rail trail, a possible rail trail. Was there something in tonight's? And I'm wondering how you would get the consent from landowners for such.
I think it would be terribly difficult. I think aspirationally, it would be great to have a rail trail, but you have to get, it's private property, and...
Because you know, my property's surrounded by rail, and quite honestly, I don't want to see people riding their bikes up and down.
That's why I think I don't think it'll happen.
And as far as the Steve Godovich letter, I don't know what you heard that I didn't hear, but it seemed to me like he didn't want to get rid of the agricultural easements or agricultural, I don't even know the technical term for it, the assessments where you get your break for having ag. But me personally, I don't mind paying a little extra on my taxes to keep things agriculture. I think his point in his letter was the fact that there's enough under ag easement, and that, you know, to bring up more or to impose, I don't think he was implying at all to get rid of it in that language that I heard. Furthermore, as far as these home enterprises, these people that have lawn mowing businesses and carpenters and things like that, I believe in capitalism. I think that that's what makes this country great, and the harder you work, you know, the more you get, right? I hear about affordable housing. Well, I worked very hard to acquire my 5 acres when I was a young man and I was going to start a family. I first bought the property, then I put in a driveway, and then a year later I did a foundation. But I worked hard for that property. No one carried me, no one, you know, gave me a crutch. If you want to live in this town, work hard or have a good job, or, you know, and quite honestly, 5 acre zoning makes it much more difficult, as someone brought up. You know, maybe you should allot some places and allow 1, 2 acre zoning, you know, with individual septics, individual wells, and let these people, you know, be able to buy a lot for less than $100,000.
Mr. Strand, your time is up, but...
That's been 5 minutes already?
That's your 5 minutes according to the bell. I just want to interject because 2 people have brought this up now. Adrian, you're right. The town supervisor can't just, what was the word you used? I can't by myself grandfather in existing businesses. But when we ever pass a plan and move on to a zoning commission, we can strongly recommend changes in the zoning code. And I, for one, believe that every existing business that's here, that nurtures this town, that people live here, they've been doing business forever. I cannot imagine a world where they cannot continue. It would be an awful idea. If that helps clarify to you, but you're right, I by myself can't do that. And I also think that the point you brought up, Mr. Strang, about, yeah. Well, it's basically the same point. You've been in business forever. And if a year went by and you couldn't work for any reason, your business should not be ripped out of your hands. The zoning should not change. If it's been here and it's worked, which they all have, what we want to do in this plan is encourage more home businesses. And every single use isn't cited in the plan. But as long as, and perhaps this is a difficult point, but there should be some guidance about what works in a neighborhood. But this plan really does support home businesses and existing businesses. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Mark Burdick.
So, I'm Mark Burdick, 19 Burdick Way, Stanfordville. I've been here 8 generations. I just want to talk about on the same thing that Jamie Kemmerer did. So there's a policy that the planning board has adopted, which they want to minimize the loss of prime ag soils in the town of Stanford. So it's my opinion that this policy by the planning board needs to be stopped immediately by the town board through whatever means necessary, and also needs to be addressed in the comprehensive plan for the following reason. Nowhere in the town's existing comprehensive plan, or this proposed comprehensive plan, or in the Dutchess County Agricultural and Farmland Protection Plan does it require that someone's land be permanently designated agriculture. It's a taking of private property without compensation. Forever, it has been the right of small residential property owners to sell their property for the greatest value for whatever the market will bear. Large property owners, especially farmers who have labored on their family farms for years, should have the same right to sell their property to a developer or whoever else wants to purchase the property for the greatest value based on whatever the market will bear. This is not wishful thinking on the part of the planning board. It's arbitrary thinking on the planning board members. In the event that a local government, its residents, or any other entity feels that they do not want to have a farmer's property or any other large property in town developed, but instead preserved for agricultural purposes or open space, then the only fair and equitable way to proceed is through the purchase of development rights or through a conservation easement, with conditions and values acceptable to the farmer. Over the years, through the purchase development right programs, the Pulver Farm and Pine Plains had their development rights purchased for $947,000. The Able Tree Farm had theirs purchased for $1 million. Mead Orchard was paid approximately $568,000 for their development rights. Through the conservation easement program, there's approximately 8,000 acres of land in the town of Stanford under conservation easement. And believe me, this is, in my opinion, if you're going to take somebody's rights, you need to pay for them, not take them politically or through a zoning ordinance. Although the donated dollar amount of conservation easement is not public information, based on the Pulver Farm, one could extrapolate that the town of Stanford landowners have received over $44 million in federal tax income deductions as a result of the conservation easements. In addition, the present owners of these easement lands receive ongoing New York State income tax credits. Furthermore, the planning board needs to be stopped at this policy because the policy could substantially reduce the value of any property in town with prime ag soils or statewide important soils. As a result, the decreased value in these ag lands would require a reevaluation of the property assessment, and if so, would shift more popular property tax burden to the smaller residential properties. In a recent discussion with a reputable local appraiser who does appraisals for purchase development rights and conservation easements, confirmed that this planning board policy, along with proposed regulations such as scenic viewshed protection and ridgeline protection, can reduce the value of the land, thereby reducing the value of the development rights or the conservation easement. The comprehensive plan states, Stanford is proud of its rich agricultural heritage, but to allow the planning board to continue this policy and not to address it in the comprehensive plan would not be a proud moment for the town of Stanford. Especially to the 4 family farms, the Kemmerer Farm, the Clarence Knapp Farm, my farm, and the Schwartz Brothers Hoagland Farm, each of which have been in the family for more than 100 years each, for a combined total of about 450 years on over 500 acres of land. I can't believe anyone think it would be right or fair to continue to allow this planning board policy, which would reduce these development rights. I've sat at when you walk out of the town hall, okay, so that's all I got to say.
Mark, thank you.
Mark, can we get a copy? Can Rita get a copy, please, if you have one? If not, you can just email it too.
Yes, she probably would, everybody should probably prefer getting emails, so she doesn't have to retype everything.
Thank you. I got 3 other letters.
Okay.
Do you want those to be read in at the end?
Thank you.
The next person is on Leighton Road, Brian Comey, I believe it is. I can't read it. Chris Flynn.
I just want to say a couple things. I'm a member of the planning board, have been for the past 4 or 5 years. I've been on the zoning board for 8 years prior, and town board. I agree, excuse me? All right, I'm sorry. I agree with Mark. As a planning board member, we do need to streamline some things. I have noticed since we went to 5 members instead of 7, we have pushed things through quicker. You know, meetings don't last 3-4 hours like they used to. And we tend to not have personal views when people come in that we don't like. And another issue, I mean, most of the other problems I've had were already spoken about, so I'll you know, I don't want to be redundant. But I do believe that we do need to streamline planning board issues, especially agricultural. You know, if somebody has an open lot, people aren't banging down the doors to open farms anymore. So if you need to save your property by selling some land and we do need smaller parcels. I live on a little over an acre on Huns Lake, and there's plenty of room for well and septic. So if you want young people to live here, you know, you're going to need it, because I raised 4 kids here. 3 of them don't live here anymore, and the 4th doesn't want to be here. So, and if you want to even be able to afford it, we got to make some serious changes. Because look at the last 3 years. Obviously, COVID screwed us, but look at the price of housing now. Yeah. It's insane, and there's no way you can keep it up. All right.
Thank you.
Paul Coughlin. No. Anna Price.
I wasn't going to sign anything. I mean, I wasn't going to say anything, and just signed up because I thought I might want to, so here I am. I think that one of the things we should consider is this is just not a local problem. It's a national problem. Everywhere you go, property rights are going up. California is crazy. I lived in Arizona for 15 years before I moved back to this area, and they're Californicating Arizona like mad, making it all Levittown. House, 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 house. And I think it's important for all of us to recognize that we just need to keep what we're doing here in proportion to what's going on everywhere else. All of Dutchess County, all of the Hudson Valley, all of New York State, all of the Northeast, all over the place, this is happening. This is not unique to just what's going on with us. I think we're incredibly lucky to live here because of the food, because of what the farmers are doing, because of everything we've got here. We are so lucky compared to so many other places in this country. And I would say one thing, that if we want to bring in and keep young people here, we must improve the school system. We must be willing to pay our taxes. We must be willing to come up with what we need to do to give our kids good educations and move forward. And I haven't heard that brought up, which was one of the reasons that I came up to speak. And I would just say that today is my 5-year anniversary of having bought my property here in Stanfordville. I am a Rhinebeck native. I was born in Rhinebeck in 1952 and moved here because I don't like what's happening in Rhinebeck. And I want to support this town, being a town like I grew up in Rhinebeck years and years ago. That said, progress will happen, whether we want it or not. The reason there's so many of us in this room tonight that have my color hair is because of the demographics. We're baby boomers. So there's a lot of us out here right now. And the group of people behind us are not, maybe not here right now, but that doesn't mean they won't be here in a while. I grew up in Rhinebeck. I left for 40 years. I then came back. Didn't really like what I saw specifically in Rhinebeck, but I love what's happening in the Hudson Valley, and I love what's happening in northern Dutchess County. And I think that everybody talking tonight from all sides of the fence is one of the most exciting things I can think of about why I have moved to Stanfordville. I love the town getting behind the recreation facility. I love the town being here tonight and everybody caring about what's going on with the comp plan. And so whether you get everything you want, you won't get it. Nope, nothing is perfect for everybody all the time. But the fact that we're willing to listen to one another and develop plans that work for the majority, but there's also, the comp plan is nothing more than just a guidelines. It's an armature for how we move forward. It is not a law. And so I think that the very fact that we're all here tonight together speaking and trying to work together is the most positive thing we could all be asking for. So I'm very proud to have moved here. Perhaps I'm one of the bad guys for many of you, but I'm a 5-generation Rhinebeck person, so it's not like I don't understand what longevity is. And I'm very happy to be here and very happy to be part of this system. So thank you.
Joe Kiernan.
Here he comes.
Wow, I don't have to adjust the mic too much. Usually it's a... All right. Just wanted to say mostly thank you all and to all the members of the Comprehensive Plan Committee and the Town Board. I know it's not easy work. Listening to the comments tonight, a comprehensive plan is a statement of our values, our aspirations, our goals. As people have said, it's not a law, it is not a dictate, but merely a way for us to manage change, which, as the lady before me said, is inevitable. So I guess, I'm not sure if I got your name, Mr. Horowitz? As Mr. Horowitz said, I would encourage as much appreciation for nuance. There have been a lot of comments about the 5-acre minimum lot size. I think that is definitely an impediment, and as an across-the-board thing, probably doesn't make a lot of sense, especially as regards encouraging younger families to come on board and call Stanfordville home. My family and I moved here a little over 20 years ago, and it was, I think, probably, we live over on Huns Lake Road, probably the last affordable fixer-upper house in Dutchess County after 9/11, and we've been working on it steadily ever since. And I'm just hopeful that my kids and my kids' friends will be able to have that same opportunity. And I mean, just in the last 5-10 years, we've had, when you look at people, Airbnbs, the sort of the housing stock that we have, those old fixer-uppers for sweat equity folks like myself to come and kind of take over and build a life. You don't see that as much because it's really profitable just to buy it, fix it up, rent it out every other weekend for something else. So anyhow, just I guess to finish up, I appreciate all of the qualities of this town that everyone here has spoken about. And I really value, as the lady prior to me said, the community participation here. And I would encourage you all, as I've seen, to be open-minded, appreciate nuance, and especially as regards once the plan is adopted within the zoning. Good planning takes, with good planning, you avoid those conflicting sort of neighbor issues. So I would just encourage you all to keep that in mind as you move forward. Thanks very much.
Nate Kimball.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for staying so long. This has been really encouraging, as many other people have said. I'm a relative newcomer to this town, but I live here with my partner, my 6-week-old daughter, and my 2.5-year-old daughter. So we are one of those younger families moving into the community, and we're excited about the value of the plan that brings younger families to the town. So I support the plan's value in that way. However, I think a lot of the comments here tonight are really, really important for the town board to consider as they update the plan. And I do think that updates should be made because there have been really important opinions expressed, really specific opinions that I'm not going to go into too much detail on because they're much more informed than what I could put forward here. But one thing that I'd like to say is that as we move forward as a community, as we see change, I think that there does need to be some sort of a framework of expressed values for the town. And the comprehensive plan is trying to do that, and I think all the comments that have been made tonight are helping build that comprehensive plan into a statement of community values. And that will translate into a blueprint for growth, for preservation of our rural character. And maybe we can do both of those things. We'll see. But as an example, I think one really positive element of the comprehensive plan is the intent to allow accessory dwellings. One thing that we've seen around the country is multi-generational living is becoming necessary with the cost of childcare, with the effort that's put into childcare. It's really important that you are able to have the ability to have grandparents around, to have relatives around, and the cost of housing is making that necessary for many. So that's a really positive element of the plan. I think there are other elements of the plan that, like others, need to be updated so that they are clarifying that property rights are preserved, that development rights are preserved, and we're making sure that businesses can come and thrive in our community. I think the other, one mantle I've taken up in the last couple of months is I'm the chair of a very, very, very newly created Climate Smart Communities Task Force here in Stanford. And so we're trying to figure out what to do. And I think the biggest thing, on my mind is the impacts that we're facing from severe weather and extreme storms on our ability to work here, on our agricultural lands, on our agricultural productivity, and on our ability to sustain business and have our homes, maintain power through the winter. Those are all really important things if we're going to bring families to town here. It's scary when you have a toddler at home and there's no power and you can't get to town or a gas station. We need to be addressing those issues intentionally because they're going to happen more often and more frequently, and the impacts will be more intense. So one recommendation would be to include consideration of how to deal with extreme weather, work with our regional partners on that. But beyond that, I think all the opinions expressed tonight have been fantastic. I really appreciate everyone coming out, and it's a real privilege to be a member of this community. Thank you.
Kevin Ropke? No. Susan Mansell?
We live at Huns Lake. I've been here 23 years. I love this town. I love the fact that it's agricultural. And it speaks very, very well to the people in this room who have come and who care enough about this town to come and express their opinions. I grew up on a farm in North Georgia, and it is unrecognizable now. It is highways, and it's because they had no plan, they had no guidance, they didn't take the time, they just developed. And all I want to say is I'm very proud of everybody here. Not that I have the right to be proud of anybody, but I'm glad that everyone is talking and trying to work together and trying to work this out. You really have to care about the place you live. And I'm thrilled to be here. It's just like where I grew up. It hasn't changed. Well, how do I know that? All the dairy farms are gone, It's not the same as it was for all the wonderful people who've lived here so many years. But everybody has to live here together. I'm not saying get rid of the farms, absolutely not. But the fact that people care enough to talk to each other and show up and work together peacefully it's amazing. The rest of the country's not completely like this, We should appreciate what we have and work together on this.
Richard Kaufman?
Hello, I'm Richard Kaufman. I've been involved in Stanford for almost 23 years now. And I would like to second what my wife said, is this is an unusually inclusive community. It's both rural and yet it's also quite sophisticated in many ways. And I see the plan as not prescriptive or prohibiting. It's an attempt to manage change as it's coming for us, whether we're ready or not. As my wife said previously, where she lived in Georgia on a huge chicken farm, now there's a car dealer here, there's a shopping center there, and it's totally unrecognizable. Just from when we married and I went down, it had already changed. And don't want that to happen here, and this plan is a good way to help prevent it. And I think we can tweak it with people who voice their concerns. And as far as things like high density or higher density housing and such, a lot of the pressure for this is coming from outside the community. It's coming from the state. And if we don't manage it, somebody's going to manage it for us. We've got to work on it here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Marty Zlotkin. Jules Wing Vasquez.
Howdy, I'm Jules. I work at Sisters Hill Farm on Sisters Hill Road. I have a couple nitpicks to start off with. One, on page 48, it claims the rec park has a skate park, which it does not yet. I'm hoping for one. Another one on page 109, it's talking about the benefits of agriculture. It says it's beneficial for open space preservation and agritourism, and doesn't mention after that the products of agriculture, the food, which I think is pretty important aspect to the agriculture aspect of the town. Community character and placemaking are also pretty important, I think. Having walkable spaces, safe spaces to walk promotes business. It promotes spending money in our local environment, in our town. I feel a lot of movement here in Stanfordville, and that is one of the big parts I'm seeing, is that we have an opportunity to build a town, a space that we can live in and has the things we need to spend money here. I hear a lot of people saying they don't want this to become Rhinebeck, but they want to live here and drive to Rhinebeck to spend money. But I feel a lot of life and movement here, and I want to see this as a place that I can be. Thank you.
Robert Young. No. Emma Dries.
There she goes.
Hi, I'm Emma. I am here speaking on behalf of the CAC, the Conservation Advisory Commission.
Emma, talk louder a little.
Okay, sorry. I'm here on behalf of the CAC to say that we support the adoption of the comprehensive plan, and we would like to emphasize the importance of the comprehensive plan review committee's recommendations for the preservation, maintenance, and rehabilitation of critical environmental areas and priority habitats. One of the great beauties of our town is our abundance of natural forest, our meadows, and our wetlands, and many of us use our town's 6 existing critical environmental areas, including Buttercup, Montague Lake, and Upper Wappinger, for recreational purposes. You run your dogs, you hike with your kids, you do all that. But these CAs are also really important for biodiversity, and that generally means that it benefits us by ensuring our clean drinking water and having clean air. One interesting thing, too, is that our wetlands can help mitigate the effects of flooding, which, as we know, we've had a lot of in the last couple months. Forests and other natural features are at their most successful generally when they're contiguous, so maintaining these CEAs as unfragmented areas is important. You know, 3 trees altogether doesn't really make a difference, but a forest does. And just to reemphasize to the point of CEAs, it's important to note that designating new CEAs does not prevent development within that area, but rather provides an additional layer of review. We agree with these recommendations in the hope and belief that maintaining, preserving, and protecting our environmental areas is not just harmonious with, but critical to our town's future as we continue to grow and thrive. And we wholeheartedly encourage the board to pass the comprehensive plan. I also just have one personal comment based on, this is not the official word of the CAC, but just based on a lot of the comments that I've heard tonight that I really appreciate, and I've really been impressed by the specificity of what people have said, the years of institutional knowledge. Several people have mentioned the average age in the room and the average age in town, and you know, the desire to have young families move to town. In that case, I would really encourage you as much as possible to listen to those young families and listen to the young families that already live here. I am a young person. I want to raise my kids in this town. There's several board members who have young children. I've been really blown away by the specificity of the plan and the years that have been put into it. We need to maintain all the qualities that make Stanfordville, but we also need to adapt. This young person wants to pass the plan. I don't want my children 30 years from now sitting in this gym trying to pass the same exact plan. So, thank you.
Ann Bernstein.
Hi, I'm Ann Bernstein. I, by and large, have agreed with the statements made by people here at this meeting this evening in terms of the cluster housing or workforce housing or whatever it's been called over the last 20 years in terms of being able to have a business in your home and protecting that, because there are a lot of things that are happening and, you know, neighbors are just looking the other way or whatever. We just accept that, you know, people are doing things that maybe aren't in the zoning code. It's sort of live and let live, and that's great, and that has some vulnerability aspect to it, so I agree with the securing of that. I also was, I guess, surprised to see what sort of a boogeyman the environmental aspect was in this plan. And I can say, as I guess I've been a member of the CAC and was a chair for a while, for maybe 8 years. I was appointed by Joe Norton, so I've been doing this for a little while. That a lot of the stuff that we do, we're, like the gentleman said, that he didn't get a notification, he didn't get a copy of this plan. I mean, the town is doing its best to get the information out that this meeting is happening, but it's just hard. There are very few points of intersection. How do we get the word out? And as the CAC, I'm often just wanting to tell people, if you would just keep a few shrubs along your waterway, if you would do this, if you would do that, you could protect our natural habitat. It doesn't mean anybody has to move. It doesn't mean anybody can't do what they're doing. It's just simple environmental guidelines on how to plant on your property, on how to mitigate stuff flowing into our waterways to protect our drinking water and stuff like that. So, for example, we went to a site that was building on a critical environmental area some years back. I believe John Kemmerer was on the board, the CAC with me at that time, and we went to the property and we basically advised them to put fencing around the construction project while it was happening so that animals couldn't get trapped, in the construction process. And I don't know, there are a few other guidelines we gave just to ensure that the process of how it was built wasn't disrupting the habitat. But in no way were we prohibiting them from doing anything. So I see a lot of these things more as a means for us to communicate essential things for the preservation of our environment with newcomers to this town, rather than seeing it as inhibiting anything in any way. But bravo to this board, really. This is an unbelievable effort that you've made. I heard about the legend, the lore of this master plan since the day I moved here 10 years ago, and just get it done. Listen to the people tonight. There were great comments. Get it done, get it done, get it done, get it done.
Tim Gifford.
Tim.
Beth Jennings.
Hello all. I am also unprepared, but I came here tonight to complain about the Airbnbs on my road. But looking around and listening to everybody, that may not be the biggest issue with the town. However, with the housing, I did agree with our friend over here that housing takes different ways, a lot of thinking and creativity. So that is all I have to say. I'll keep it short, but there is no supervision with the Airbnbs. I don't even think they're allowed in the town of Stanford. I'm not positive about that. I mean, I love Airbnbs. Definitely don't want a high-rise apartment complex in our area.
They need to be regulated, and it's on the long list.
Yeah, maybe 2 and 3 family houses. Single-family residences are not environmentally friendly from my education, but there's just so many ideas and ways to solve it. So thank you. Love Stanford.
Alexandria Panacci.
Hello. Didn't really have a lot to say because I found it, like some other people, difficult to
Speak a little louder.
difficult to get information on just what's in the plan. And having sat here, I'm finding myself concerned that the plan is overreaching but not specific. What worries me most is the idea that it's decided for us that we need to grow, but no one has answered what that will cost us. You talk about affordable housing, yet many of us would like to continue to afford the houses that we actually have. Stanford will lose its character if we push affordable high-density housing. And how will those have water or utilities? I mean, I know 3 houses in Stanford just from, they need new wells. I've moved out of a town where my less than $3,000 a year taxes jumped to nearly $20,000 after the town leaders assured everyone that their projects would not cost us. Elderly neighbors were forced out, and I personally would not want to see those kind of jumps happen here, but there's a lot of really expensive things that I see when I scan this plan. So that is very worrisome to me. And then I just have a note from just one other person from town, my mother. She says Stanfordville attracts a certain type of person, someone who wants to live in a small rural town. Whether someone wants to live in Chappaqua, Bedford, Stanfordville, they need a certain income. However, turning us into one of those does not guarantee younger people. Like many small towns since COVID, we attract city people who then want to change us to their liking. Affordable parcels just means they can come here and have a second home. So be careful what you wish for, because you might get it. That's it.
Tom Spentner. Spetner. SHP.
I'm sorry, my last name's very difficult, Spetner. I hear everybody like debating it, but look, I'll be very brief, and I want to just try and maybe unify some remarks that I heard. But firstly, I'm a relatively new neighbor. I've only lived in the community a very short time, but I'm immensely privileged to be here. There are certain civic virtues we possess, or things that are a public good, like our library, that I'm immensely proud of, even though I've only had a card for a very short time. I feel that the remarks here have been really informative, and I think a lot of the history that some of the individuals expressed, Mr. Layton and Evans, you know, some of these remarks really got me a lot farther than the plan itself. So,
can we have everybody stay on that side? The microphones are...
Oh, I don't mean to mess with you. I just feel like it's bizarre to have my back to the group. Okay, but like, look, I understand that, but like, I really am, I got my back now to 90 people, and I really want to address the whole group. So I didn't mean to create AV problems, but, okay, but like, I'm in the middle of my remarks, and I really, you know, everybody else has been speaking that way. So look, I don't want that to cut against me, and it's late. And the fact that everybody's here and it's so late, and I'm having this debate with you really undercuts the importance of the civic virtue that we have as a community. I heard a lot of respectful comments. Not everything was perfect, but I know from just being, you know, an empty nester that the only constant is change. That's what we're stuck with here, is this change. So how we manage it and how we listen to each other, we have to rely on, I heard great remarks about nuance, but I want to reemphasize history, because I think that understanding the rural character of our community will propel us, because we need that context and nuance. I also want to put up another remark that I think is really important. I don't think our elected representatives in the state or in the federal government understand what's going on this side of the Hudson. I've had conversations as a newcomer with Hinchy's office, and they basically said as much. They don't know what's going on over here. They're all in places like Ulster County, and they don't really have a connection to us. And I'm not disrespecting them. I just know that when you look at the list of office hours for Hinchy or Ryan, there's one time they'll be somewhere like Red Hook, and 6 times they'll be in Gardner or New Paltz or wherever, Kingston. So I think that leads me to another problem. Our change in infrastructure, or changes our community are facing with respect to infrastructure, are very important. And I'm not really addressing, you know, everything comprehensively. There's no way to do that tonight in this forum. But I would like to point out that the federal government has appropriated $660 million to New York State for rural broadband. And I don't care if you're a farmer or a pharmacist or whatever, just working from home, or you want to stream video games, your whole life has been herded onto the internet, whether you like it or not. You have to go to the federal government for your Social Security or your DMV in the state or something at the county. There's a form that Central Hudson will make you deal with, and that's just the reality of life. So we need to think about our growth in terms of infrastructure for things like cellular, which I think is crucial for public safety. I live on Layton Road, and it's beautiful. I'm blessed to be there. And by the way, if you see me, I have a hound mix. Please stop and say hi and shake hands. But there's no cell service, and God forbid, I live alone, and you know what's going to happen if I break an ankle? I'm going to have to go on my elbows out to my lawn. We got to do a little bit better in terms of taking care of ourselves as a community through thinking these things through. And we need our elected representatives at the state and federal level. There's nobody here tonight from either of those areas, and you know, all politics is local. So I'm going to wrap it up. I did have notes, but I'll just end on a note of real gratitude for the civic engagement I see. It's past my bedtime, and there's a lot of people still here, so thank you.
That was the last one.
Okay. So the question is, do we read letters into the minutes, or?
Is there anyone else?
Yeah, nope. Oh. You mean, is it on the list?
Is there anyone who skipped earlier who wants to speak now, who was on the list, who's still here? Okay, then I guess we'll read the letters that people sent and asked to be read into the record.
Here's one. Go on. Yeah.
Someone's asking a question.
I'm sorry.
If it's going to be a comprehensive plan, one
something was to have in common was that they wanted, everyone to agree, they all wanted to have a say.
No, the plan doesn't go, in New York State, comprehensive plans don't go to referendum. The elected town board votes on the comprehensive plan, either up or down.
But that's why this meeting tonight is so critical, because we're here, we're listening, we're taking notes, we're going to meet again. It's clear we still have work to do, and actually this is incredibly encouraging. So anyway, we're going to read the 2 more letters, I think, into the record.
This is dated July 30th, 2023. This is from Douglas Kirchner. It says, Wendy Burton, Town Supervisor. Unfortunately, I am unable to attend the meeting tomorrow regarding input for the comprehensive plan for the Town of Stanford. I would just like to express my thoughts and feelings regarding the plan and its attempt to address growth, development, and land use in our town. Clearly, input from residents is critical in the evolution and development of the plan, and were I available, I would certainly attend. I will make every effort to participate in future forums, as I am keenly interested in the future of Stanford, having been a longtime resident. Our tenure, like many, has evolved from being weekenders when we bought in 1995 to becoming full-time residents in 2010. Like many, I believe that one of the unique characteristics of Stanford is its bucolic nature and a wonderful blend of farmland, small towns, and hamlets. Our property is protected under the Dutchess Land Conservancy conservation easement, which has given us a secure feeling that little would change in the future and that those protections would be respected going forward, because all people enjoy the direct or indirect benefit of land under conservation easement and protection from unbridled development. Having reviewed the general proposals in the comprehensive plan, I understand how much a clear and unified approach to our future is necessary. Clearly balancing the demands for housing, and especially affordable housing, while maintaining our rural nature and natural character is challenging. And the need for clarity moving forward is extremely important. It is my belief that these opposing needs can be met in ways that are both fair and reasonable for everyone. Although compromise rarely makes everyone happy, it is a necessary tool in planning. One of my biggest fears is that without defining areas which are suitable for higher density commercial and residential development, we will suffer by allowing incremental add-ons to individual properties in the form of accessory apartments or ADUs. This phenomena has played out in many other communities in the country with what I would consider detrimental effect. By converting outbuildings, garages, and adding new accessory structures, one can fairly easily double the density of a home site. Often the infrastructure is insufficient to make this accommodation much more than an eyesore for proximate neighbors, i.e. parking, privacy, noise, to name a few impacts. Also, with the universal increase in Airbnb in every community, property use has morphed from full or part-time residents to a parade of short-term rentals with little or no regard for neighbors, essentially opening up our rural home sites to a form of unregulated commercial activity with little or no opportunity to exercise controls which are present in commercial areas. To that end, I believe that strengthening the zoning code as it relates to ADUs and accessory apartments is critically needed. I would advocate strongly for not allowing secondary housing units above 600 square feet that is currently in the code for properties too small for guest cottages, i.e. under 10 acres. I believe that this is the only practical way to limit density on smaller properties and save us from the potential incremental doubling of density on smaller properties that are within rural districts as defined by the comprehensive plan. It seems to me that there are several areas within Stanford that can handle higher density, and they have traditionally and historically been defined as the villages and hamlets where many houses are clustered. I'm also concerned that in advance of adopting a comprehensive plan, there is a push to make conversions, whether commercial or residential, and get in, quote, under the wire before any plan takes effect. This is noted by recent approvals by either the Planning Board or ZBA. It would be nice to see a temporary hold on variances so that we can all have input of the direction and planning of the future of our community before it is too late. Impossible to ever go back. Thank you for your time and consideration. I look forward to future opportunities to share my views and potentially would consider working with you to further the comprehensive plan. Sincerely, Douglas Kirchner. Kirchner.
And I have a letter from Brad Ralston, 6863 Route 82. I'm sorry I wasn't able to attend the public hearing in person. I've read the comprehensive plan thoroughly and want to express my appreciation for all of the people who work so hard on it. It's an impressive piece of work, I believe a very good blueprint for balance, growth, development, and individual property rights with community preservation and shared natural resources. I want to express my enthusiastic support for the adoption of the comprehensive plan and reiterate my deep appreciation to everyone involved. Here, Rita. Well, this has been a terrific marathon. For those of you who have lasted till the very last minute, I appreciate your attention. I appreciate your comments. I think the board has a lot of work to do. I look forward to doing that, and we shall meet again. So thank you. I make a motion to adjourn.
I second that emotion. Motion.
I'll also stick around if anyone wants to ask any questions or raise any concerns they didn't want to do publicly.
Who's all in favor of adjourning?
Aye. Everyone said aye, Rita Mary. Everyone.
Aye.